I'm Ed Musselman and my wife Meagan Musselman, and we're actually on site today at the barbecue pits at Knoth Barbecue, and I've delayed the finishing of the cook just a hair to where I can fire it a few times, and we'll walk over to the pits. We'll put the camera on the meat. We'll make some decisions on how to finish it and go from there. So first thing I'm going to do, I've kind of been letting the pits just kind of sit for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and fire those up one time. I'm firing 2 pits of shoulders here on our pit 6 and 7. I'm going to go ahead and fire those up to temp, and then probably through the duration of by the completion of the presentation, we should be able to go open up the pits. That firing will have cooled a little bit, and we'll take a look at the meat and see what we've got and make any decisions that we need to do to go forward and finish up tonight. So first things first, my trusty technology here, we are definitely old school. I've got a shovel, and I've got some coals, hickory coals down here in the fire pit. So we keep this fire burning all day long. I'll be throwing a little bit more wood on here in just a second, but I've got a lot of nice hot coals there to start off, and about a shovelful. And we're our precision technology here. You just kind of have to get used to what a shovelful looks like and how many degrees that's going to add to the situation in the pit. So whenever I'm looking at a general temperature, knowing what result I can expect. So I'm gonna get a full shovel on both of these pits here. Get them smoking nice, get them heated up good. This process just goes all day long. It is really, the way you cook barbecue, the way you cook Western Kentucky barbecue specifically is low and slow all day long. So a lot of the secrets aren't really secrets. It's just long hot days, attention to detail, and freshness of product. So we cook 7 days a week, fresh meat every day, and just we're very fortunate that we have the volume that justifies the labor in doing this process every day. You can see the smoke hopefully on the camera start to roll out of pit 7 there. And I'm hitting pit 6 once.
The sun has gone down.
So what we have in here is meat. We have fresh pork shoulders, never frozen. We get them as close to the kill date as we possibly can. Freshness is key on this process. These pits were loaded by someone else this morning. We have starting cooks and finishing cooks. Sometimes it's the same person. We have someone come in about 6 o'clock every morning. It's a process of getting the pit cleaned out, getting all the meat out of the walk-in, getting it loaded on the pits. We salt them lightly on top, and then start firing as soon as we have coals in the fire. So these shoulders here were loaded, and the first firing actually occurred by 6:45. So once they got all the preparatory work done, pits were brought up to temperature about 6:45 this morning. It's usually about a 12 to 14 hour active firing process. So all day long, we're basically just spiking that temperature up, and then as it cools, firing it again. All hickory, all just coals, no active fire underneath the pits. And if we have that, that's a problem. So these shoulders are now actually getting really close to the end, and this firing here will be the final one before we actually check them. They haven't been looked at since they were flipped about 2.5 hours into the process. So at 6:45, he started the clock on them, and I guess 9:15 he would have flipped them. And since 9:15, we haven't seen what we have there, and we'll open them up here in just a few minutes, close to the end of the presentation, and I'll show you how we estimate what to do to finish them. I'm going to throw some more on here, and we'll get to get to talking a little bit about the history of Knoth barbecue and Western Kentucky barbecue as a whole. Just all day long, as soon as you fire a pit, replace those coals with some hickory. We get our hickory, we source it locally either through Donovan, Missouri or Dawson Springs, and it's coming from sawmills, so it's scrap lumber, and we get it by the truckload, and we need as much as we can get. It's a very labor-intensive process here. Lots of coals. So Knoth Barbecue was founded in 1965 by Hugh Edward Knoth's father, Leonard Knoth. And Hugh's father and his mother worked together for about 10 years before Hugh Edward took over. His grandfather had a role in operation, did a lot of the cooking initially, a lot of the pit cooking initially. And anytime I fire, I keep an eye for at least the next 10 minutes. But the business has been around for a lot of years and has become known for quality. And I've got to spend countless hours with Hugh over the 4 years that Meagan and I have been involved in the business, and really there is no secret to what's going on here. A lot of chefs don't allow their secret out of the bag, and the secret here is doing the thing right with the freshest meat possible, and that's what we do. And every single day we repeat it. So there are a lot of shortcuts into barbecue. Doing it right in the old school manner, there aren't any shortcuts and there aren't any secrets. It's really just a long, hot day every single day. And again, getting the freshest, most recently packaged shoulders you possibly can get. So 1965, they were off to a start. They learned the barbecuing process from a gentleman who had been doing it for about 50 years in Old Catawba, which his barbecue pits are now part of Lake Barkley. He was getting out of the business, taught Hugh's dad how to cook barbecue, and the rest is history, they say. So they were located across the dam here on the other side in Lyon County up until 1992, and there was a fire at the original location, and they were very fortunate that this current original location, the second location, was available, and they were able to reopen within 5 days. Early on, it was just like any small business. His mom and dad were fighting to make a living, really starting on the ground floor, trying to build something. And his dad actually credits an appearance. Ed McMahon ate at Knoth Barbecue and talked about it on the Johnny Carson show. And Hugh attributes a lot of the early success and stability of Knoth Barbecue to that appearance and the kind words that were spoken about how good the barbecue was at this small barbecue joint on Highway 62 in Kentucky. So very interesting little start there. And as it would be, full circle, Hugh actually got Knoth Barbecue mentioned again on his night show whenever it was with Jay Leno, and he had posted or ran an ad, and it was a tongue-in-cheek ad, and Jay Leno highlighted it on his headliners bit, and Hugh had made up a small coupon that said free glass of ice water with every purchase, and then it said in parentheses must have coupon to count, and so that was featured there. So two appearances on the Tonight Show, and again focus on freshness and quality. A lot of hot. Standing here right next to a blazing fire, this is just the routine. The smoke all day, every day. So Meagan and I became involved whenever our head brewer at Dry Ground Brewing Company was a big fan of Knoth Barbecue, talked about it all the time, loved it, and he caught the notification on Facebook from Knoth Barbecue in June of 2017 that they were closing, and he was affected by that, and basically leaned over to me, knowing that I'm half crazy, said, "Hey, you want to see if we can keep it open?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's do it." And so we contacted Hugh and Angela, got to opening the discussion with them, and long story short, would you like to sell the business rather than close the business? And we got a deal worked out. They were scheduled to close June 24th, if I remember correctly. And my one request was, please don't close. I want to keep everything the same. I want it to continue. And if you would stay on for a couple of weeks, really give us a feel for this business. I don't want to change it. I want it to feel right for the customers. The 55 plus years you had building this, I guess it was 53 at the time. We want to provide the continuity for that to go on rather than Ed and Andy's barbecue shack. So that 2 weeks ended up turning into 4 years. I see Hugh almost every day. First 9 months, I cooked with him every morning. Learned countless things about barbecue, history of barbecue, the history of the area. Just a great family, great people that we've gotten to know through this, and he's definitely gone way above and beyond in making sure that we're appropriately equipped to carry on with what his dad and his grandfather and himself built. So very proud of that, and honored to learn this craft from a true barbecue legend. Western Kentucky barbecue as a whole, it started what we're doing right here on these mason pits. Cinder block pits, very simply constructed, but purposefully. The right amount of air in and air out gives a good consistent cook to where we're not cooking one shoulder in one corner and leaving the rest of the pit raw or vice versa. So it is very sophisticated for what was created. Probably started to be used in this area 150, 200 years ago. This isn't the actual 200-year-old shovel, but it probably could be. Just had some recent repairs to that. And what Western Kentucky barbecue is all about is a historically, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, historically depressed area, rural, and you had this piece of meat, the shoulder of a hog, that was not good for typical cooking. And so you weren't getting something as good as a tenderloin off of it. You couldn't grill that up on a grill and cut it up for steaks. It wasn't a Patty's pork chop. So it was this piece of meat that this type of cooking was developed in order to take this big old piece of meat, cheap meat that was wasteful, and be able to feed a ton of people. And so these pits were built, and you cook it low enough temperature, long enough period, and it just falls apart in your hands. And then all of a sudden you have something pretty great out of a cheap piece of meat. And so that's the process. You can cook up a steak, you can cut a steak, cook up a steak 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how you grill it, and you're ready to go for dinner. This process is kind of required because, again, we're not working with the prime tenderloin. So it's a 24-hour process, as I mentioned earlier, 12 to 14 hours of active firing. These pits will be maintained overnight. Basically, I'll leave them at about 220, 225 degrees, and they will slowly drop to about 170 degrees by the morning, whenever the morning pit person comes in to load the pits. They'll make an assessment on whether or not additional coals are needed to keep temperatures up. The meat itself will probably be about 185 degrees in the morning, and then we'll be serving them by 11 o'clock. I'm getting inundated with smoke, so just natural, I turn around and check for a fire. The smoke here is very wispy and not violent. And the moment that it turns to something that you see coming out of a window of a burning house is whenever you have to get your firefighting underway. And it happens probably once a month, possibly, where you get a pit fire, and we don't lose the meat if we're on it right away. There's nothing about calling a fire department, but just have to go tend to it and get the fire extinguished. Yeah, so my wife brought up a good point to discuss. The difference between Western Kentucky barbecue and other regions. Basically, all regions across the country have what they term barbecue, and each one is different. And it really goes back to historically in that area what was readily available, what was cheaply available. And again, most barbecue historically done was designed based on that premise. It was, what do we have excessively, and how can we make it desirable? So in Texas, you've got lots of cows. They have lots of brisket, primarily. You've got North Carolina barbecue. They may not use all hickory. They may use the more local species or more prevalent species locally. Memphis style barbecue, they use all kinds of woods. Sauces were, the style of sauce was developed based on, an original recipe that someone made and paired with it, and then over time, this area was primarily vinegar based, or this one was primarily mustard based, and a lot of those nuances can be found to this day based on what was done with the resources available at that time. We use all hickory here. We have no short supply of hickory in this area, and we just feel like it puts out the smoke to make Knoth barbecue. If we did it with cherry wood or apple wood, it would put out, impart different flavors, and just not our style. So nothing wrong with that. I know there's a lot of barbecue places that use apple wood and cook really great barbecue. We use all hickory. So I will turn it over to my wife to discuss a little bit about the small business aspect, and kind of we've done a few different things, and we've extracted value, our own educational value, from successes and failures. Primarily, the failures are the learning points, and they're hard to talk about while you're suffering through them. But afterwards, usually that's where you get the biggest benefit. So we do like presenting, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The simplicity of this business has meant a lot to us, as far as really just it's small business development. Starting a small business, growing a small business is a lot like cooking barbecue. A lot like cooking barbecue this way. There's no shortcut. There's no secret. It's really just a good thing done over a long period of time, hard work. Don't give up. You can't rush this process. I cannot physically possibly cook this barbecue in 2 or 3 hours. By and large, there's no get rich quick scheme that's guaranteed. It's really just a good idea and persistence over time to generate what you're after. So she without telling on her, she is not a pit cook. She does everything that she does great, but we don't ask her to stand in front of this fire very often. So
I was like, can we move this outside?
We're going to walk out to the hickory pit, and I'm actually going to attend a little bit to this fire, check my temperatures, and put her outside for just a second. So this is about, I'll reorder after we go through probably about 5 or 6 more bundles. They bring it in by the semi-load. This will not get us through. If I just stopped ordering wood, this would get us probably through till the end of August, and then I'd be in trouble. So with everything going on with COVID and availability of food, and I mean wood for that matter, knock on wood, no pun intended, but I don't want to show up with shelters and not have wood available. So I'm removing a little bit of potential variability there and making sure that we stay at least 1 load ahead. So I would feel more comfortable in a normal year, going a little bit more depleted. But this year, a sawmill could just say, hey, we don't have any wood, and I'd be out in my backyard chopping down a hickory tree, which I'm not above. So that's always the contingency. But I'm going to go check the pit temperatures and have at it.
It's like 30 degrees cooler out here, so I'm glad that we moved out here. So while he does that, I think another part of this presentation that the library asked us to do is just talk a little bit small business tips, and certainly things can go in the chat that we can answer later, and I'm sure our contact information will be shared if you're watching this as a recorded version. We're pretty easy to access, and we're an open book and happy to help. But Ed touched on a couple of things. This has been our most recent business venture, Knoth Barbecue, and for those of us, or for those of you that may be newest in Paducah, it came at a very unique timing. We had just opened Mellow Mushroom in the Coke plant there in Midtown, not even 4 months prior. So the timing was really less than ideal. But, that's kind of how life is, and that's how opportunities often are. They don't show up, neatly wrapped at the perfect time. And so I'm really glad, looking back on that 4 years ago, that we didn't just say, oh my gosh, we've got too much going on, we can't even think about this. Because I'm sure that would have probably been the smarter thing to do. But at the time, you know, um, it's been a lot of sacrifice to get to this point. But a good opportunity is a good opportunity. And this business being around since 1965 in our area, and to close, that would be a tragedy for the area. And we could not have asked for a more wonderful family than the Knoths to welcome us in, and make us feel like part of their own family. And like Ed said, Hugh is here every day, helping out and making sure things go just as perfect as they always have. So we're very thankful for that. But timing is not always right. And so I think, as far as the small business mindset, you just have to kind of train yourself in what you're looking for. And when you're evaluating opportunities, we've done some real estate investing too, and I think there's some overlap there, that whether you're evaluating houses or properties that you might be interested in, or businesses that you may be interested in, it's very similar in that you learn enough to know what it is you're looking for, so it becomes really apparent when you spot it. And one of my most favorite things about this business, compared to some other businesses that we've been a part of, is the simplicity. And Ed talked about it. He's showing you, and thank goodness that he does that into the business, where it's just low and slow. It's like a 16-hour process most days, where you build a fire, you get coals, you put it under the meat, it slowly cooks the meat. And there's definitely technologies that have made that faster. I'm sure you're aware there's a lot of gas cookers out there. And sometimes people are misinformed and think that we have switched to gas cookers. But we just really feel that this process is special. The history of it is special, and we just think it makes better barbecue, and it just tastes better. So why fix it if it's not broken? So the simplicity to this, it's a very simple menu. If you've ever dined with us, you're going to be offered, we have pulled pork. We have limited quantities of beef brisket each day. And you can either get that on a sandwich or on a plate with some coleslaw and fries. And then we have like burgers, grilled cheese, and hot dogs too. And that's it. We have soft serve ice cream that we can get you in a cone, or we make some great milkshakes. But people come to us by and large for our pulled pork, and so we just focus on that and do that well. If any of you have ever read Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about the hedgehog concept, and I feel like this business does that really well. For years and years and years, they didn't try to be everything to everybody. You know, we don't offer chicken, we don't offer ribs. It's we focus on one thing that we feel like we do really well, and we just continue to make sure that that is a quality product and that our customers can come to expect that from us. So I think that's a great important business point to make when you're either starting a business or you're evaluating a business, is because I think it's easy to get distracted, and to look around maybe at potential competitors and feel like, well, we need to do this, or we need to add this, or we need to change this. And I think it's easy to get distracted on that, and then like to refocus yourself and think, what is it about this business that makes it successful, and make sure that you don't lose sight of that and you don't lose focus of that, because you can only do so many things well before something else would suffer. And
what you say is not something that like the aha for us wasn't figuring that out. It was the fact this business has been around for so long, and all we were trying to do is continue the success that they had. And so it came to us in the form of, don't screw up a good thing. And through that, with 4 years of talking with you and asking questions about why this, why not that, why this, why not that, it always comes back around. I may not always like the explanation, but I'll be sitting there firing up the pits, and all of a sudden, like, realize the way that the subtle nugget that he dropped maybe days, weeks before, it's like, yeah, it's simple is better. And like with business startups, you don't have the ability to have 55 years of existing success to lean on all the time. Never. And it's really easy to get in your own head and to listen to all these things. Let me add a profit center here. Let me add a profit center there, and like lose focus on the thing that started you in the direction down that path, providing the best quality service at the thing that you are best at. And Meagan, I heard her mention mellow mushroom. Mellow mushroom is a great concept, and we're glad to have been a part of that for 4 years, and we are no longer involved. But the complexity of running that business versus the simplicity of running this business, and really focusing on your core menu items and maintaining the utmost quality control with those. And that goes into our expansion into Paducah, opening a second location. We expanded these pits. We added the 2 pits that I'm cooking on right now with the shoulders. I do have briskets on pit 5 that I'll show you here when we check the meat out. We added pits, and it increased the workload a little bit for our cooks, but I still have one main point of quality control. And we need to have friendly service and servers that are knowledgeable of the menu and can speak to the history. And we have to have cooks that make sure that we're serving hot fries. And there's obvious things that have to go right on the restaurant side. But by and large, the thing that we're being evaluated on time and time again, the thing that we are most proud of, has one point of quality control, and now it's servicing 2 locations. So we cook all of the meat for Paducah and Lake City here with the same cooks, the same meat, the same process. And if we have good meat, we've got good meat at both locations. And so, not getting that watered down to the point where we're constantly chasing potential for a quality upset. And again, not having this would be a very, very, very complicated matter to control if I had 1 pit of ribs, 1 pit of chicken, or a partial pit of ribs, a partial pit of chicken, a partial pit of brisket, a partial pit of this, that, and the other, all being cooked at different temperatures over different times.
But to be fair, no one is likely doing Mason Pit with that variety of meat.
There probably are some still out there, but the challenge there in making it a very repeatable process on the thing that you're most trying to present at the highest quality to your customer is easier with the focus on it. So sorry to come in on that, but
no, the simplicity is. I think another thing we wanted to touch on is just as far as small business tips is just to encourage you to not get discouraged. And also we were going to talk a little bit about having a spouse as a partner, because we've known several other couples that do business together, and then we've known people who individually are doing a business or businesses on their own and their spouse isn't involved. And we just feel very fortunate, I think, that
there's enough
we
challenge.
work well together.
Any business is going to face enough challenges. A successful business, an unsuccessful business, a new business, an old business. You've got challenges around every corner. And right now, speaking on the surviving side of COVID, to where we're starting to see some return to normalcy.
Except for the meat prices.
Except for the meat prices. Yeah, a big abnormality that we currently face. However, it was last year across the board. Everybody obviously was impacted in one way or another, significantly or insignificantly, with everything that the nation, the world was dealing with. And then to not just be an individual clocking in, clocking out, but also like taking all of these changes and all of these circumstances that there is no template for, and having them all thrust at you at once. And it's just line it up. Here's another problem. Got that taken care of. Here's another problem. Line up. There's another problem. And the resilience factor of just getting used to facing adversity and knowing that, hey, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the end of my business because I just solved that problem. I'm going to solve this problem. And while you're in it, it might feel overwhelming at times, but but the perseverance of it, once you solve one thing, you build up, your resistance to the fact that like failure is not an option, because we'll just hit it head on and solve that problem. So this last year was really one thing after another. Meat shortages, supply issues on oddball items. Obviously, how we had to like interface with the public was completely different. Expectations for our employees and monitoring all manners of health, and everything had an additional management burden. Everything had an additional cost associated with it. And if you go in thinking that a small business is going to be easy and perfect right out of the gate, you're disillusioned. But once you have that setback, you get better at handling the next one. And you don't want your whole life to be one like potential failure after another in this constant agony. But again, if you reassess, if you constantly are reassessing, do I believe in what I'm doing? Do I believe in the plan that I'm following, that I'm implementing? Then at the end of the day, there is no quit. And so you have to be wise. There are businesses that you should be successful at, and it just doesn't work. And that constant reevaluation of taking like the known circumstance, evaluating, is this a good idea? Sometimes it may be to where you get into a dream, you get into an objective and a goal, and you reevaluate it, and all of a sudden the circumstances have changed to the point where you have to recognize, yep, this is no longer a good idea. And so being aware, having that awareness of evaluation, constant reevaluation, and differentiating that between the going is getting a little tough, I'm out. And those two things are extremely different and can be masked in disguise as the same. So keeping your head on your shoulders, keeping an optimistic approach, a no-fail attitude will go a long way. But you also have to constantly reassess, what can I do better? What can I do differently? Should I continue? Is it wise to stop? And I think that anybody who has successfully operated a business through the last year and a half needs to just give themselves a pat on the back. Whatever you did to still be there, still operating, having those doors open, customers coming in, good for you. And take that strength and know that, hey, the next thing that comes up against me, I'll handle it. All right, so we are nearing the end of our 45 minutes. I'd like to, when I checked the pits while Meagan was speaking, pit temperatures were down at around 250. We fire those up to about 300 after the initial flip. And it's really just a rough guide. It's no exact temperature. So if you're setting your cooker at home, don't go off the temperatures I'm telling you. But we just basically have a probe thermometer into the center of the pit that gives us some baseline of when is it time to fire again, so that we don't really need to like get in there, hands on the pit, looking at the smoke, assessing like, are we at 200 or are we at 300? So we use a real rough guide just to kind of let us know, like, all right, time to fire again. So throughout the day after that initial flip, we're firing those pits roughly to 300 degrees, and really the internal temperature is probably somewhere more accurately like 270, 275. But when our indicator shows 300, we're dialed in where we want to, and we let it fall to 270, 275, and then we'll fire it again. So once we get close to the end of the cook, we slow that down, and we're basically dialing in the finish. So we're kind of like landing a plane. It's like you're just flying along. You're nearing your flight, and you're starting to come in. So you're slowing down, putting the landing gear on. I'm not just hitting this pit hard constantly. So basically, I've let that pit, it was at 250 a moment ago. It's probably going to be down around 235 or so when we get back in there. It's a good time to go ahead and open the pit lids for the first time since flip and really assess, is the pit even? Are we close to done? And if I have some areas that are closer to done, I'll avoid those with my final firings. And then the shoulders that need a little bit more, I'll do more of a localized firing underneath those. And then again, I'm still cooking for the next 12 hours. So I cannot fire them all the way to roughly done 250 degrees. I have to judge ambient temperature. Summer cooks, I cannot go 100%. I have to go to about 85. And so there's a little bit of guesswork in that, and that is a lot of what, you either get right and have a great day, or you're going to have a really bad day tomorrow. So we're going in here, and I'll give you some guide work, some little trigger points that we look for to assess whether or not we're done. Since we've gotten on here, the brisket in particular, we fire lower. We can cook that a lot faster, but we basically slow the firing down pretty much just because we can, to make those finish around the same time as the rest of what we've got. So I'm trying to get a visual here, but I've got two really good looking briskets there, good and done. Those will be nice and hot, probably about 180 degrees in the morning. One of them will go to Paducah, one of them will stay here in Lake City. And yeah, if you want brisket, you have to get there early. Right now, we started the year just for, well, another detail. We started the year in the spring with brisket prices at normal price. I was paying $2.47 a pound. Right now they're $4.66, and that's the cheapest I can find. So without going through the roof and making $12 sandwiches, really that's just an add-on item for us. So we have to, again, business decisions, weigh the customer disappointment and being out of brisket versus us basically having a loss leader. And really what we're doing is shifting people towards buying a thing that we're losing money on versus buying pulled pork, which is why we're in business and the product that we're most proud of. So we're basically just serving one brisket a day at each location. We could serve probably 2 to 2.5 at each location, and we will do that as soon as those prices come back down out of the stratosphere. They're pretty high right now. So it's 7:45, 13 hours. Typically I would be done, but I slowed up the cook to be able to do some of this with you all tonight. And I think we'll be to where I'll probably have 1 or 2 localized firings, if I'm guessing right. I'm gonna grab some gloves here. And I don't remember how many I had them load in the morning, but somewhere probably around 30 split between the 2 pits. And I can cover the pits with paper to keep the ash off the shoulders. So there's a little bit of ash collected there. Let's get this out of the way. And what we've got here, I don't know if, should I open the, get this a little bit more light in here. And so looking at these, first thing I'm looking for is if I have any bone exposed, I'm getting really close on these shoulders. So even without touching the meat, I know that I'm getting close to done. I'm not 3 hours from finish. I'm a couple of good firings away. So the first thing that's going to finish is the butt, which is the top. And then the bottom of a shoulder is the picnic ham. And that's usually the last to finish. It has larger muscles. It's a little bit thicker piece. So this will start to get a little bit squishy. And again, no exact guidelines here, but I'm looking for probably about 85% finish. So 205 degrees, I've got everything good and broken down, all the tendons, ligaments, the meat's starting to really fall apart and be good barbecue. I'm probably cooking these to about 185, 190 tonight based on ambient temperature and what these pits are going to do overnight. And there's, again, no exact science. That's kind of where the 55 years lent to me through Hugh comes in handy. So about, if I tempt all these shoulders are probably about 190 degrees, 185, 190, and I'm getting really close. So back here, I'm getting pretty good depressions. Whenever it feels like an inflated football, I'm not quite there. This one right here is not quite there. So if I was cooking these to 100%, I'm going to check this bottom muscle underneath here, and this bottom muscle will fall apart like pulled pork whenever it's a done shoulder. And I don't want to get that there, or else I'll have an overcooked pit by the morning. But by and large, my back row here looks good. I won't put any more under them. This one right here needs a little bit more. The front, these last 2 over here are done. These last 2 are done. So basically these 4 right here in the front row are going to get 1 more firing, and then we'll leave that pit for tomorrow. So second pit here. We can fit 21 shoulders on a pit. Anytime we go over 21, we're into multiple pits, and we just cook them evenly.
So kind of checking these areas here. I've got this one right here is the least done. That one's not all the way there. This back row is feeling great. Back row is exactly where I want it to walk away tonight. And I'll do one more firing across the entire front, and I'll leave that. You learn the hard way a couple of times. Changing temperatures. This was the first year that we cooked all year long because we opened Paducah December 3rd. So typically we don't fire. So this winter was a learning experience for us, and trying to maintain and overcome the cold temperatures is a whole different challenge. And so once you start to get to summer temperatures, Hugh Edwards says it like this. He says, you know, barbecue's meant for hot weather cooking, and whenever it's 100 degrees outside, you're halfway there. So, you know, whenever the outside temperature is helping you along, it makes for an easier day. There's fewer firings. Obviously, it's hot, it's smoky, it's still a challenge. But that winter cooks, you're basically having to provide all of the heat, and you're overcoming cold temperatures. So you actually have to take everything to 100% and not rely on these pits continuing that cook through the night. Right now, these pits are gonna stay hot for a long time tonight, and we're gonna have perfect meat tomorrow. So if you're listening, come get some tomorrow. So we're gonna turn it over to a question and answer there. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. I'm gonna push these pit lids closed as we get adjusted to that. We close the pit lids to trap the energy in, trap the heat in. They stay open. The doors are ajar, if you can see them, to allow the right amount. Basically, you're trying to get a balance between keeping heat in and allowing enough oxygen in to utilize your coals. So if you put all your coals underneath there and close those doors every time, all you're going to come back to are cold coals that never turn to ash. So you've got to have enough oxygen in there to utilize the burn to give the heat off, or you just end up with a really long cook and a lot of firing, hard day, and probably results that you're not looking for. So these particular pits right here, we have ajar a little bit. We have good wind today, good crosswind. We can alter our doors to get the right flow to where we're not just blowing cold air or too much air to start fires, or not having enough air and not getting full utilization of all. So there's just a balance to play with.
Talk about your sauce and its distribution.
And I also said that I told you what I was going to do with the firing and haven't done it yet. So after we're off up here, I will go back and I'll fire those 4 on pit 6, and I'll fire the front side of pit 7, and that's actually when I would close those doors up. But just so I don't confuse anybody on what I'm doing there. I'm sorry, the sauce. So the distribution, it's something that we could grow. It is definitely something that we have started doing. We started doing mail orders. We tried it 2 years ago before COVID, and our 12-ounce or 16-ounce glass bottles did not survive shipping in any way, shape, or form. So unless we were buying basically a nice padded box that cost more than what was worth the investment, keeping that glass bottle intact 100% of the time in most shipping containers was the issue. So what we did, we sourced a plastic bottle for shipping only, and we've started shipping those out, and those flat rate shipping opportunities to where it's like pack as many in as you can for a set number, for a set shipping rate helps us a lot. So whenever someone reaches out, we know exactly, oh, you want 1 bottle, you want 3 bottles, you want 6 bottles. We know exactly what the shipping rates are, and we can quote them accurately. There's local retailers that carry it. We do not have UPCs on them at this time on our labels. We just had some more labels run. That will be a future thing to get into Kroger's and larger retailers that require the UPC code. That is definitely work out in front of us. There is definitely an opportunity to grow our retail sales on that front. But we at this point, it's local retailers, and we sell a lot of sauce out of the restaurant. Thank you for the question.
And we've also we've always sold our slaw sauce because our coleslaw sauce is very unique. If you don't like coleslaw, give ours a try. You might like it because it's probably unlike any you've ever had. And we've always sold that in bottles, but it's never had a label. It's never been on a shelf, but a lot of locals know that they can buy a bottle of slaw sauce, and people use it for all kinds of recipes. And in the restaurant, they use it to dip their fries in and stuff. But now it's got its own label. It's never out on shelves because it does have to be refrigerated. So our mild and hot barbecue sauce you'll see out in our restaurants on shelves for sale. But the slaw sauce you just have to ask because it's got to stay refrigerated. But locally in Paducah, Wagner's has been the first retail place to start carrying the slaw sauce. So it would just be in a refrigerated area.
And then we have a mild and a hot. And our mild is best described as a sweet sauce. It is vinegar based, but it does not separate. So whenever you think vinegar barbecue sauce, I wouldn't categorize it as that, but there is a hint of vinegar in the flavor profile. But it is more of a sweet barbecue sauce. It's very unique, and it was developed very early on in Knoth barbecue. Mild sauce is by and large the fan favorite. The hot sauce, we add a considerable amount of cayenne and black pepper to, and the base ingredients of both sauces are fairly similar, other than the additional pepper. There is pepper in the mild sauce, but again, that it's more of a sweet flavor. And I'll be honest, before I became involved in Knoth barbecue in this manner, I never had the mild sauce, and I just think it's phenomenal. And it's something that I heard about, the mild sauce, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And now I just love it. And to me, like, that is as much Knoth barbecue as the barbecue that we're working to create. And slaw sauce, when we did the label, just kind of a little kitschy thing that we did on the side of it. I mean, it really is kind of like almost like the next ranch dressing. I mean, obviously that's a little bit inflated of a goal, but it's that intended. It was slaw sauce. We mix it with fresh shredded cabbage that we shred in house, and then we mix our slaw sauce with it, and that's our coleslaw. And it's delicious like that. But then there's just this multitude. Ranch dressing was salad dressing, and then it became the everything sauce. And our slaw sauce is really intriguing in that manner, to where we keep hearing of new recipes that people are using it in, and we included at least one recipe on the table that we just recently did that. But thank you for the question. So we, as far as the cook goes here, I've got 2 small firings left to do. I'm real happy with the brisket, real happy with the evenness of the shoulders, and again, those pits will both finish up really well. Megan's over here fanning herself. I think she's catching a cool breeze through those 2 doors there. But it's a fun place to spend a day. It really is a great job. It's something that I'm happy to do. I enjoy it. Every day I'm learning something new. Do the same thing 1,000 times. I've cooked thousands upon thousands of shoulders, tens of thousands of pounds of barbecue in 4 years, and like all of a sudden I'm just like, I don't know why I didn't know that before. And that's part of the intrigue. There's no written like full understanding. Push this button, do this, dial this in, and you think you've got it, and then you still figure out new and better way to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. This incomplete pit, I failed to mention that, and there's another one over here. So we've built 3.5 new pits, and this is going to become our brisket pit. So I've built a smaller pit to free up a bigger pit for more shoulders. And really, all of these pits, the reason that we have all of these pits, we don't use them all every day, but we have done meat on the pits before. There's still done meat on the pits that isn't getting served to the restaurant until the restaurant opens, and we're loading the pits for the next 24 hours of cooking before that meat goes in. So for a lot of years on busy holiday weekends, you might have 3 full pits of meat Thursday for Friday, and then loading 4 full pits of meat, and you only have 5 pits, and then not to mention the brisket. So whenever we added the Paducah location, it just became absolutely essential, and really just kind of an improvement in the quality of work for our cooks. I mean, because it's hard. It's a hard day to come in here and cook 4 pits of meat, 78, 84 shoulders, somewhere in that range. If you're having to hand load all of those, cart them in from the walk-in, load them all in the pits, last thing that, just kind of that deflating feeling of, all right, well, I have all these done shoulders that I need to move and combine into one pit to use as the warming pit. So we have all of these pits now. We don't fire them all every day, but they are going to be very much essential for future growth, for current growth, future growth, and then just again creating a little bit easier process. But thank you all so much for your time. Appreciate it. You all at the library are fantastic. Thank you for having us. If you ever need us for anything at all, don't hesitate to call. And I hope you all learned something. And maybe we'll see you out here checking these pits out in person. Stop by sometime, and if I'm out here, I'll be happy to give you.
It's right at the foot of Barkley Dam.
Right, the entrance to Barkley Dam is right there. If you hit the blue bridge, you went too far if you're coming from Paducah area. Again, thank you all.
Thank you.